The tabletop takeaway.
Game mechanics on display.
Three designers share the stage.
Pick a genre and we'll play.
The tabletop takeaway.
Welcome back to the Tabletop Takeaway. I'm Ananda Gunaratna.
I'm Charlie McCarran.
And I'm Trevor Miller-Hagel.
And today is our bonus episode on real-time games.
Real-time games? What's that?
Games that are played
in real time.
In real time.
I guess, yeah, self-explanatory. That makes sense.
Yeah. So we looked at 3 different games, Dutch Blitz, Magic Maze, and Skyrockets. And, of course, previously, we also looked at...
Set.
Yeah, we looked at Set, Factory Funner, Ricochet Robots, all of which are real-time or have real-time elements because pattern recognition, I think, is kind of a subset of...
Not to mention Galaxy Trucker. Even.
Yeah, Galaxy Trucker also has real-time elements.
Oh,
Yeah.
but wait, Captain Sonar.
And Captain Sonar.
Captain Sonar is another real-time game.
And it's so fascinating. Like, I can never think of real-time games. Or there was a point recently where I was like, oh, real-time games? I don't even know what real-time games I know. But there's a lot. You just don't think of them sometimes as real-time games.
Yeah.
Because the focus is on something else.
Right.
And these ones, I think, all focus really well on the real-time aspect.
Yeah.
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 And there's also, like, I was thinking about other categories of games. There's also, like, word guessing games where you're trying to be the first to guess something.
Yeah.
Like, I guess concept is cooperative, but you still kind of want to be the first one to get the thing right.
You know, if you're
guessing.
playing like those games where you shout out the answer to what something drew or someone drew or
Right.
Yeah.
whatever it happens to be, like there's a lot of things out there.
Yeah. I guess the only real requirement for real time is that the actual passage of time needs to matter.
Right.
Right. Like it's not obviously Skyrockets does have turns in it, but time still matters in those turns because time is what you're trying to juggle and
Time is tangible in
Yes.
those games because we create the sand timers and that makes the
Yeah.
time a very tangible thing that you interact with.
yeah. And
And there's like, so, you know, a few ways you can do it with sand timers or other audio
Clocks,
tracks,
yeah.
clocks, whatever. But also the other players are the
Right.
main.
Especially if it's a competitive game.
yes,
You
as
want
in
to
Dutch Blitz.
you're
Yeah.
trying to race them or do better than them in a certain amount of time, yeah.
That's an interesting point. In a competitive game, you don't necessarily need a sand timer,
Right.
Because other people try to do something first. In a cooperative game, though, everyone's cooperating, so I guess maybe you do need a sand timer.
Unless it's the mind.
Right.
And you can't so the
True.
mind we mentioned in another episode, you are cooperating, but you're playing cards down numbers 1 through 100 in the right time that you think is good to play this card in your head. But meanwhile, the other players are inadvertently maybe screwing up.
It's like, okay, I've got one that's pretty close to that one. Okay, it turns out it's 15 more, and you just skipped over like 3 people's cards. It's like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
And then there's other games like, for example, The Gang I played recently, which I guess technically happens in real time. So in The Gang, it's kind of like The Crew, which we covered, but with poker. And the main part of the game is there's poker chips 1 to 6 or 1 to however many players there are, and you're sort of taking the chips to indicate how strong you think your hand is relative to everyone else's. And technically that happens in real time, but there isn't really a time pressure at all.
Sure.
So I think one aspect of real time is that there is sort of a time pressure where it's not just about it's not just that you're all doing things at the same time, which is simultaneous play, but it's also you need to do things within a certain amount of time.
Yeah, and you know, obviously the Cursed Temple, Escape from Cursed Temple is time-based, literally. There's a timer. But then also the dice create its own restriction. And so I'm curious what you two think. What resources do real-time games have that are not necessarily components?
Well, we've already talked about this a fair bit, I think. But
Yeah.
I think one of the most important aspects of real-time games is that attention is, if not, attention is one of the main resources, I feel like, in real-time games. Now, attention, to be clear, is kind of well, from the game designer perspective, attention is a resource in any game because
Right.
players only have so much attention. If you overburden them with lots of different things to pay attention to, they will just ignore some things.
Yeah, they'll burn out.
Yeah. There's two ways they go mainly. Either they get so AP prone, they get so much analysis paralysis that they can't do anything, or they just tune out large parts of the game and sort of tunnel vision on something.
Oh, sure. I've done that.
Yeah, but like from the design perspective, the implication is that, especially depending on the type of thing you want them to pay attention to, you may not have the attention budget to let them
Yeah.
do that. Like, for example, if you have really complicated mechanics that interact with other players, those may not work out the way you want because players may just ignore them since they're so complicated. And then when somebody else like attacks them with a card or something, in theory they could have seen that coming, but in practice they did not have enough free attention.
Yeah, they didn't have the attention budget. Yeah,
Right.
I like that attention budget.
But in a real time game, the attention budget is a lot more tangible to the players as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably one of the key things when you're designing a real time game is you have to be super aware of the attention budget, and the game needs to be really simple. Like the games that we looked at are very simple.
Oh yeah.
If they were not real time, I wouldn't. I don't. I mean, I
They
don't.
wouldn't be fun.
Yeah, they
I
wouldn't-
don't know-
Oh my
I don't
god,
know
I
if
would have
they
been
could
so
exist.
bored if with Magic Maze if we had to take turns. It's like, okay, that one moves right.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
That's
or
my
like-
turn. Pass.
or
Yeah.
like Dutch
Dutch
Blitz.
Blitz.
It wouldn't make sense.
No,
Right.
Like
it
you
wouldn't.
Yeah.
take a turn. What do you do? Okay, I move this card to the center. What's
Yeah.
there's no game there. The real time is what makes it into a game,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I think it's
There
even.
could- yeah. I could see a version of Dutch Blitz that could be turn-based. I was thinking about this, where maybe there's some tension between, do I think I can, like maybe you're kind of risking it. Do I want to put this on my post because I think this next card could be something else? Like if there's hints
Yeah.
at what was coming in your Blitz
Sure.
pile.
Okay, I guess there are a couple decisions you could make.
Maybe, but
Little Spirit
that-
Islandy, but competitive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
But I think contrasting the games we played today with the pattern recognition games,
Yeah.
it is even more the case that they need to be extremely simple.
Yeah.
Like Ricochet Robots is simple, but it's still kind of, I feel like it's more complicated than the games we played in terms of what you need to be figuring out.
processes you're
Computing
doing.
power, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if we mentioned this. Well, with pattern recognition games specifically, all the work happens in your head.
Yeah.
But when you actually go in and show people that you've got the right answer, there's a verification process, right? So you can catch things when people do things wrong. Whereas with the types of games we played, where it's real time, but you're also doing things,
Right.
not just in your head, that verification process is not possible, which means it needs to be simple enough that people are not going to make mistakes
Yeah.
because you can't catch them.
Absolutely.
And because it sort of becomes less fun if you're getting overloaded with stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's why when you have different scenarios, you can allow people to get comfortable with the subset of rules first, and then add little bits and pieces, but you only add little bits at a time,
Right.
so that you're not like if you played like Skyrockets with all of like multiple scenarios at the same time if they were compatible, I think that would probably overload people too much, right? And so like you'd have a really hard time thinking all of those different pieces floating around because you cannot focus on that many different
Right.
rules or side things or little pieces. Like, yeah,
Well, and that's a good point because if you look at Magic Maze, the first 7 scenarios of Magic Maze are all intended as tutorials.
right. They're building you up to the core game.
Right. And
Yeah.
and if you explained all the rules of the core game at once and just jumped straight
Yeah.
into it, I think people would mess up rules.
They just start
certainly.
moving characters around. Like, oh, I made it! Yay!
Yeah.
I will say one thing that you just got me thinking about, though, is an advantage of real-time games is that sometimes it just screws up players, and those create fun moments. Because,
sure.
like, most games, you can think them out, and if you kind of made a bad choice or screwed up, you feel bad because you had all this time in the world to think about it, and you played a wrong play. Versus, like, Galaxy Trucker or any of these games we played today, some of the most fun moments and funny moments were when we actually made a bad play and we got stuck in the maze and we're like, oh no, why did we do that? So it gives you permission to screw up as a player and
or like
then
Factory
have fun.
Funner.
Factory Funner too, yeah.
Where you take the wrong machine.
Oh, what a bad idea, but I ran out of time, so I don't feel as bad.
I did not need that color vat. Oops.
It's like the equivalent of rolling dice. Oh, crap, I rolled bad. But, oh, crap, I just did this bad move because I ran out of time.
Well, not only that, but often you don't even have enough time to feel bad, right? Like you make a mistake, you can't feel sorry for yourself because
you've got to go on to the next thing.
You have to keep.
You have to make
playing.
up for lost time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we definitely have attention and time are both solid resources for these games. Is there anything else that is like another abstract resource for real-time games? And I don't have an answer necessarily, but I'm trying to like see, is there anything else we're not seeing yet? I'm only going to give it a few moments of silence.
I think it's mostly attention.
Attention,
to be
attention, then time.
That's like attention and time are the two critical.
Yeah.
I think brain power, like how fast can you
processing
compute things, is your resource.
Which I think would be tied to attention a bit. Also, while we've been talking, so all of us have tons of games in process. We all have all these different ideas, right? But I just thought about, so I have a game called Heroes Born of Darkness, which I've been working on since 2015 or 16.
Are you going to make it real time?
I want, like, because one of the times I was looking at it was having these tactical battles, right? But like it was using grids and, more like just like a very traditional D&D style game where you have all these special abilities. But what if the battles were real-time games where the cards were very simple, but you're fighting against the villain and you have a real-time aspect to it so that they resolve quickly, and then you can stop, and then you'll do the normal turns and normal things after that. And I was just like, being able to combine real-time elements into non-real-time games, I think can add really cool moments of tension and interest that you don't normally get in just like a normal turn-based game.
Yeah, and we've covered two examples of that in Galaxy Trucker and Factory Funner.
Exactly.
Which have both real-time and non-real-time elements to them.
Yeah, so I think thinking about real-time as not just like the whole game is a really fun thing to approach with game design, because it doesn't have to be the whole game. It can be, and it can be really engaging. But if you do, you tend to want to have those games be very short or shorter. If you have an hour-long real-time game, people are going to be so exhausted they're not going to want to play again.
Yeah.
That is a good point. That generally real-time games need to be pretty short.
Yeah. Or like we've talked about when we were talking about Captain Sonar and our video game series too, is like
respite,
real time, and then you have a break to plan things out. Or for example, in Skyrockets, or like the game's so short, now we get a break and let's try a new one, or retry the same one, plan out what we were going to do better the next time.
Well, and that was what was great with this. Like, I think for the racing games, half the time we didn't even have time to finish one of the games, but in this instance, we played each game multiple times, between 3 to 6 times each. And that's great to me, because that means we can get more exposure to it, get a real good feel for it. But also they're just so short, and I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind for these games. If you want to go full real time, make it so you play it more times than just like a long one time to play. Or if you do have a long time play, break it up into sections.
Yeah. So something I've been thinking about design-wise is there's a lot of games out there that are like very puzzly and AP prone, and it's like, I could think about this forever to find the maximum best play. And I've tried one of those types of games, and Trevor Kirchner and I were working on this like Chinese checkers variant.
Different Trevor.
Thanks, another Trevor.
Wow.
we have a lot of Trevor
I've been betrayed.
game designers around
Charlie
here.
specifically has a lot of Trevor game designer friends.
It turns out. But this was inspired by the Game Jam, working on this game. And it's very AP prone in terms of like, I could make this perfect play, which is fun to do, but not when it's like a 4-player game and by the time it comes around to you, it's already changed. So I've tried that real time too, which people are iffy on. And I'm curious, like what you guys think of making those kind of games where it is pattern recognition converted to real time. Yeah, I don't know. That's one thing I was struggling with.
Yeah, I think if you're able to pulse the real time, that helps a lot with your ability to like accelerate for a moment and go back and forth very quickly. I'm trying to remember, because that was at the 2D Con Game Jam, right? That was the Wild West.
That was
Or a
the
different one.
Iron Designer.
Oh, the Iron Designer one.
challenge.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
we
Trevor makes
do-
so many games.
we do some game jams.
for us. Yep.
Which game jam?
Because I'm pretty sure at 2D Con we actually did a real time
Oh,
Wild West.
Right. That's
Game jam.
That's another game. We actually
Yeah.
started it as real time, and now we took out the real time element. But
And sometimes that's
happens.
important to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually working on a real time game right now.
oh,
Ooh.
let's hear it.
Well, it's called Patent Trolls.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So-
That's right.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Patent Trolls.
Yes, and basically it's about alchemy. So you have a cauldron. You're trying to come up with a recipe, and one lesson that I learned working on it is the initial way that the way the cauldron works is it's split into 5 sections.
Okay.
For the elements, it's the traditional Chinese elements: water, fire, wood, earth, and metal.
Yeah.
And so you put marbles to indicate the components of your potion. And originally I had it where you had to, you were trying to come up with a recipe that would create a specific combination of elements. Mm-hmm. And if you did not create that combination, you didn't get any points.
Oh, sure.
And that was too harsh. People had too difficult of a time coming up with the recipe, because the way the recipe works is there are different ingredients that manipulate the marbles in your cauldron in certain ways.
Oh, okay.
And so you need a certain sequence to get it to the right state.
And it's real time?
And it's real time.
Yeah.
And people are just having too hard of a time coming up with the sequence. So what I did, which improved it a great deal, is instead of having a recipe which you have to match exactly, I had a bunch of scoring criteria. So like, if your potion has this much fire, you get this many points. If it has more wood than water, you get so many points. And then just say, okay, make whatever you want and we'll score it based on how it is.
Yeah.
And that works really well because it doesn't force people to make a specific thing.
Yeah.
They can just,
They can get close.
yeah.
Which feels more fun with that game anyways. Like I've gotten to play test it, and my favorite part was the feeling of like, oh, you mean we can like make whatever we want and just like practice with our little spinning cauldron, and there's not really this is the right way to do this. Figure it out for yourself. It felt like a good combination of real world like exploration of science. So yeah.
And I don't know if this is where you're going with it, but I immediately thought of the stars from Skyrockets as like, this is a 3-star potion because I got it perfect, but then this is a 2-star or 1-star potion. Yeah. That's immediately like how that makes perfect sense that you'd have like a weaker grade potion.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that.
Yeah. So that's what I've been working on real time wise. And well, I guess so. Looking at lessons from these games, obviously for me the really big lesson is on attention and keeping things simple.
Yeah.
I've tried to keep things simple on this game. There's only so simple I can make it. Before the ingredient combination mechanics need to be a certain amount. They need to be complex to a certain degree because otherwise the potions are just too trivial to make.
Oh, sure.
So that is a little bit of a limit there. But also the game is more pattern recognition than the stuff we've been doing.
Okay.
Your cauldron is an aid. And in pattern recognition games, I think what I've seen comparing these games with the pattern recognition games is that pattern recognition games don't need to be as simple as like a real-time component manipulation game, such as...
if it's more heady, you can have a little bit more going on because...
Right, because there's going to be a verification step.
Right. If you have a verification step, and
Then it can be more
that means you have a pause, right?
Yeah.
That means you pause
That's right.
the game at some point.
That's right.
And that's I think key if you want to make it a little more complicated.
Yeah. So I guess maybe my takeaway is that, Yeah, I guess my takeaway is if it's purely pattern recognition with a verification step, you can be a bit more complicated. If it's manipulation, it needs to be extremely simple.
Yeah. Very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I really want my takeaway to revolve around acknowledging your resources and what you are trying to get out of the game. So focusing on that time element and that focus element and seeing like what blend you're going for and how intense you want to go with. Do you want it to have a verification step? Do you want to have a pause partway through the game so you can make it a little bit more complicated? Manage those budgets as best you can, but understand that like it is a bit of a teeter-totter, right? It is a little bit of a balance board where you want to make sure you don't get too crazy one way or the other, or you're just going to kind of run yourself into the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my takeaway and thing I want to make next is a competitive real-time game that's not just speed-based.
Oh, yeah. A precision.
So can I do it maybe without sand timers? That'd be cool. But like
Dice.
from Dutch Blitz, ooh, yeah, some other component that is ticking time.
Right.
That could be cool. I don't know what, but like it was fun and inspiring to play Dutch Blitz because I've mostly only played cooperative real-time games, I feel like, lately. So fun to try one of those games where it is about the speed, but there's moments of just like waiting to see what the other players will do.
Oh,
and
sure.
it'd be fun to formalize that a little more in the mechanics. Like, ooh, you want to kind of wait until someone does something. That could have its own problems of like everyone's waiting there forever, but maybe there's another secret timer that only you see. Oh, I don't know. This could be fun. You have your own secret timer.
Hidden timers.
And you have to do
Hidden timers.
You have to act. Yeah.
It's a brand new frontier.
Yeah.
Hidden timers.
This is a hidden time game.
Yeah. I also want to find out a way to make a component that would be like a visual or sound ticking down thing, so you maybe could hide it. And
You had a wind-up spring, the coiled spring.
yeah,
Like a stopwatch.
Yeah, I mean, I know you can 3D print those. So,
Man, the world's so insane now.
I mean, that's definitely a mechanism that you can do without any moving parts, right? It's just a coiled spring. You wind it up, and then it ticks down, and you can use that to power motion or something. Yeah, that's
you're giving me an idea now.
okay.
Okay, this will be cool.
I want to make Dutch Blitz
Legacy.
Dutch Blitz Legacy. Dutch Blitz
Yeah.
meets Balatro.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
my-
I'm in. I want to play
That's
that.
my big new idea.
If you can make Dutch Blitz like an hour-long game that is actually really engaging the whole time, that would be really fun.
When you say hour long, do you mean over multiple sessions?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah. Not one. Oh my God, I would vomit probably.
I mean, to be honest, I could already play multiple sessions of Dutch Blitz for an hour.
Right.
I,
Right. But like if it's one like where it's like it has an arc in the
Yeah.
game and you feel like
the progression arc.
with little catch-up mechanics too in there, like yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
That
And it
is
has to
one
be
thing.
superhero themed.
Yeah. That is one thing that I think playing Skyrockets again and Magic Maze, they are a series of progression. It does feel sort of like a progression from one thing to the next, but I think it would be cool to, like, if they had amped up you get some power from one thing to the next. Well, I guess Magic Maze does that a little bit, but it doesn't feel like you're progressing as a player through the story.
You don't have a progression really.
Yeah.
The game does progress with the scenarios as you like unlock new things at the beginning, at least with the tutorials. Now we don't know. I don't know what happens after the 8th scenario, which is the first non-tutorial scenario. But I imagine there are other things that happen throughout the.
Yeah, each one just has a different rule.
Okay.
A
Little twist.
So after you get out of the tutorial, the rules don't stack. It's
Sure.
just changing up what the special, like the 8th scenario which we played, which is the first one after the tutorial, has the rule where the stack of tiles is face up.
Oh, right.
So you can see what's coming, which we didn't maybe make as much use of as we could have.
Yeah.
But in theory, that lets you control the layout of the mall a bit. But then the other scenarios have other quirks.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, we did it. Real-time games.
Real time. Now, real-time and dexterity games. Never mind.
Yeah, I was thinking another theme we could do is like, sport games.
Sports.
Like Clask or
Right.
Battle Dome. I really want to play that with you guys. That's one from my childhood that's like 4-way pinball. You're trying to knock the balls into each other's
That sounds
pinball
interesting.
holes.
Physics games.
Physics games. Yeah, that could be fun.
I mean, the fun is catching its mousetrap.
Yeah. I mean, we could do that.
Is that a game? Or is that an activity?
Is that a toy? Maybe.
Anyway.
Yeah. Many more themes. Feel free to suggest them, too, on our website.
Or in our Discord channel.
Yeah, Discord channel. Trevor, you should give a shout-out about our design challenges.
First off, apologies for the last one being a little bit later than I intended. But now, going forward, we're going to keep them a little bit chiller and a little bit more open-ended just to make it a little bit easier on me to make sure I can keep up with them. So each one will still be based off of the genre we're working in as of that session. So like right now, it's going to be a real-time game. But it's going to be a little bit more, I don't want to say abstract, but it's going to be a little bit more flexible with how you go about the challenge. And honestly, this is just to give people inspiration, just to get people kind of putting pen to paper and seeing if they can come up with something. Obviously, there's no like winners or anything like that. This is just a fun thing for you to give a try to. And there's other ones always in there. I'm going to try and keep a thread going for each one so that you can go back and even see previous ones. If you want to participate in those old ones, feel free. There's no time limits. There's no anything.
Yeah.
Although if you need a time limit, go ahead and give yourself 30 days after you hear this.
Perfect. Yeah. and the fun part is, you can post it in the Discord and get feedback from us and other people. So, yeah, the tabletoptakeaway.com would get you to the Discord link.
Yes, it will.
So, awesome. Thank you all for listening. Till next time.
Hey, thanks for listening to The Tabletop Takeaway. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. So please tell your friends and visit our website at thetabletoptakeaway.com, where you can suggest games and mechanics for us to cover next on the show.